what are the things you see in the salespeople that are consistently great?
So the ones who are performing consistently, either consistently great for themselves, right? And
Hmm.
I think that's a valid point to clarify, because not everyone's going to be consistently great like LeBron, but they can be consistently great like themselves as the sixth person on the team, and that's great for them. And so, it being relative, I think the biggest thing is they have a consistent sales system and process, whether it's documented or not. In their head, they do the same thing over and over again. It's a machine that they just do, right? They just do the same thing over and over. I've had some just rock star people work on teams under me, and I've taken, like, this is in call centers, where I've taken 10 of their recordings and I've just matched them all up, and it's literally the same thing minus the
Mm.
responses from the customer. They go down the same path, they control it, their transitions, everything they do is just the same. And so they get the same results. They don't deviate. The people who struggle are usually all over the place. They try something, maybe it works, it doesn't. On the next call, they try something different. That may or may not work. That's why I'm a huge one for scripting and consistency and systems, because if it works, do you even know why? Right? Like, you're just making cakes with no recipe. It works. You're like, how do I make that cake again? I have no idea what actually worked. And there's a lot of people playing at sales and they're just hoping it works. And that's where they get into terrible slumps because
Yeah.
they just don't actually know.
Isn't it funny, Jason, is like the more we have these conversations and the more I hear people talk, it's sales is simple, right? It hasn't changed in a billion years. Of
No,
course,
no.
the tools we use and so on, but it's like, you have to have a process at the end of the day, my friend. You have to have a plan at the end of the day, my friend. And if you don't have a process and a plan, you can be lucky once in a while, but you won't have that. What we're talking about here is consistency. And so my process and your process don't have to be the same, but what is the process that works for you? And it goes back to, sorry, using the sports analogy, it's the same thing. If I'm a baseball player, right, I'm going to approach pregame the same time every time. And in off season, I'm going to approach this off season every single time. Now I might incorporate different things because changing times, but I have a process and I have a plan and I'm going to go execute that. And that's the last piece, right? It's process, plan, and then at the end of the day, can you execute? To your point, you're right. But it's just reminders constantly. That's why these podcasts are useful for people. It's like, it's just these gentle reminders. If you keep doing these things and taking advantage of the things you can control, you can be a great person as well, right?
Right. And, I wrote a post on my blog about this, but I basically said, are you a professional? Are you selling and operating like a professional sports athlete? Let's say basketball again. Are you doing that? Are you practicing, putting in the time, watching the game footage? Like, are you watching the replays, listening to yourself, getting feedback and going through all that? Or are you playing pickup basketball at the YMCA just for fun, but then expecting, big NBA contract and to get paid like a professional when you're just showing up and just messing around?
Yeah. So the last piece of this, persuasion, right? That's not easy for everybody. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, you in our real lives, we see people that are really good at persuading people, right? And it's hard to teach and it's hard to learn, but it's necessary in sales. And I have a process I put in place, and one of the stages I have is fairly unique. It's called actively competing, and it means that you're at the point in the deal stage where you've you followed a process, whatever that might be. You did your pitch, you did an assessment, all those fun steps, and you're in between that process, those steps, and the verbal yes or the verbal no. Right, you're right there in the middle, and it's when you have to put your foot on the pedal and accelerate and continue to create momentum on your own. And to me, that's the area where when I look at your book and what you're talking about in Persuasion, that's when you really have to think about, okay, I'm at the point where they're thinking about this. I think they like us. They also like somebody else for this. So what can I do to help persuade them? And what can I do from a task standpoint. So what are the things I have keep momentum? What can I do from a strategic standpoint? And that's, I'll be honest with you. I think that's where a lot of people lose focus is they get closer and they think that they've done all they can and they kind of let their foot off the pedal a little bit and they're not thinking with their persuasion cap.
I totally agree. And one of the biggest things that helps with that is when you know what your transitions are and what that's going to be from one section to another.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I see a lot of sellers fall short is they've got the chunks of their sales process, but they don't have the transitions of how do I get from one to the next, right? Like like you're talking about. And then you've got that part where you're actively competing, where you know they've got something else involved. It's like, okay, how am I going to transition? Depending on where you're at and what you've done to that point, I generally just take the assumptive process, which is I know what you need. We've discovered that. I know I can help you. And so here's the next step. Let's go for it. If there's a competing thing, one of the biggest things that I've always done is I just call it like it is. I don't dance around it. Just be super honest. Most salespeople aren't going to do that, and I just call it like it is. Like,
Give me an example of that. Like, what do you mean? And
you know that they're talking to somebody else. What is it that you like about them? Tell me. In the beginning of conversations too. Like I will do this all the time when I talk to somebody. It's like, hey, I'm sure you're shopping around. Tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Tell me who else you've talked to. Tell me what you're doing. Most salespeople are scared of that because they don't want to open that door and feel like they're going to lose. I want to know. I want to know right away. Like, what am I up against? I know I'm going to be better. So who do I have to beat? And how deep are you in with them? And if I do that front, then when we get to that other point, that transition is easy.